Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/WTech. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Moving the needle. Welcome to the Washington Policy Podcast.
Curating communications, media, and tech policy news so you don't have to. News, interviews, everything you need without the axe to grind. It's the Washington Tech Policy Podcast with Joe Miller.
FirstNet releases its $6.5 billion RFP. Howard University announces plans to participate in the incentive auction. And Wendy Rivera is my guest. FirstNet, the group within the Department of Commerce that is spearheading the federal government's effort to create a single national public safety broadband network, has released its RFP soliciting bids from companies to work on building the network. They've flagged $6.5 billion for contractors to work on the project, and awards are expected to be made in the fourth quarter of this year. Full proposals are due April 29th, with questions due on February 12th and capability statements due on March 17th. So that's February 12th for questions, March 17th for capability statements, and April 29th for the final proposals. The New York Times reports that Howard University is going to participate in the FCC's incentive auction coming up in March. Recall, the incentive auction involves broadcasters selling back some of their spectrum to the FCC so the FCC can repurpose the spectrum for wireless services. Howard boasts the nation's only black-owned public TV station, WHUT, which has been on the air for 35 years. The university did not disclose the extent of its involvement in the auction, but its participation necessarily means it would either give up all of its rights to the spectrum or end up sharing spectrum with another broadcaster. For more information on the incentive auction process, including the implications of the incentive auction on media diversity, you're not going to want to miss my interview with Davina Sashkin of Fletcher, Heald and Hildreth on episode 18. Technology played a major role in President Obama's State of the Union speech. John Egerton at Broadcasting and Cable has a nice summary. The president noted the role of the open internet order and the role the commission has played in helping students and low-income Americans go online. He also asked Congress to pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a bill designed to ease trade with Asia by cutting taxes on American-made goods and protecting workers worldwide. He also asked about the potential role of technology to impact climate change and the need to address the role of technology, particularly social media, in promoting extremism. You can find John Egerton's full summary of the president's discussion about technology at Broadcasting and Cable. Following accusations last week by the Electronic Frontier Foundation that T-Mobile's Binge On service is actually a throttling mechanism in disguise, T-Mobile CEO John Legere put the advocacy group on blast. Here he is on Twitter.
So what Binge On does, it includes a proprietary technology, and what the technology does is not only detect the video stream, but select the appropriate bit rate to optimized to the mobile device. That's part A of my answer. Part B of my answer is, who the f*** are you anyway, EFF? Why are you stirring up so much trouble? And who pays you?
EFF's activism director said EFF is an advocacy organization that is supported by, quote, tens of thousands of people, end quote. Legere then said his comments weren't intended to be a personal attack against EFF. Meanwhile, SlideFuse, creator of Stream.tv, announced it would no longer participate in Binge On because of Legere's remarks. However, as Ars Technica notes, SlideFuse was not yet an official Binge On participant in the first place, since it was still hashing out the technical requirements with T-Mobile. The FCC acknowledged a recent Pew report finding that the rate of broadband adoption across the U.S. has plateaued. Gigi Sohn, special advisor to FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler, noted at the Digital Pathways Summit that the FCC is seeking to expand the Lifeline program for both fixed and Lifeline service. Sohn also noted the commission would likely seek to establish minimum service standards for Lifeline providers to continue to receive Lifeline funds. Some advocates have said Lifeline subsidies are too widely available. Advocacy group Consumer Action filed a petition with the FCC containing over 2,500 signatures asking the agency not to limit Lifeline subsidies only to households that receive SNAP assistance or electronic benefits transfer. To get the basics of the Lifeline debate, you'll want to hear my interview with Michael Scorrado of the National Hispanic Media Coalition at episode 12. The House released a report about the Freedom of Information Act entitled FOIA is Broken, which illustrates the chamber's concern that the FCC is deliberately hiding information from the public. The Oversight Committee on Government Reform is accusing the FCC of providing more information to Congress than it provides to the general public. And as an example, it lists a side-by-side comparison of versions of emails produced to Congress without redactions and versions of the same emails produced to reporters that had redactions. The FCC countered by saying it complies with FOIA requirements. The Hill wrote the Democrats it spoke to said the report is partisan. The House also passed a bill that would make significant reforms to the FOIA, and the bill, the Freedom of Information Act Oversight and Implementation Act, would create an online portal for FOIA requests and make other changes. The Hill also notes that a previous attempt to reform FOIA failed back in 2014 because it failed to get enough support in the Senate. Finally, Charter and several civil rights organizations have announced a memorandum of understanding of what some of the company's diversity and inclusion efforts will be if the federal government approves Charter's proposed merger with Time Warner Cable and Bright House Networks. In a press release, the company noted it would build on Time Warner Cable and Bright House's diversity efforts by appointing one African American, one Asian American, Pacific Islander, and one Latino American to the new post-merger board of directors. The company will also appoint a chief diversity officer and improve procurement and programming diversity, according to the MOU. The release notes that 12 organizations have agreed to sign the MOU. These include the National Urban League, National Action Network, National Council of La Raza, League of United Latin American Citizens, National Hispanic Foundation of the Arts, SER National, Hispanic Federation, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC, OCA, Asian Pacific American Advocates, Media Action Network for Asian Americans, East-West Players, and the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies. Stay with us. For you, my dear listeners of the Washington Tech Policy Podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. You'll be amazed at how much time Audible will save you. And guess what? If you use an audiobook during the free trial, you can return it and get another one as long as it's within that 30-day period. If you purchase a book from audible.com, you can also return it. No questions asked. How about How Successful People Think by John Maxwell? You can download How Successful People Think or another audiobook free by trying audible.com. Sign up for your free audiobook and 30-day trial today at audibletrial.com/WTech. I'm so psyched to have my friend Wendy Rivera join me on the show today. Wendy's someone who works on policy like the rest of us, but what she really excels at is telling her personal story and infusing her work with it. It's fine to know what's happening in policy on the Hill, at the FCC. It's often enough just to get by. But if you really want to connect your policy making in a way that connects both inside and outside the Beltway, telling your story is critical. I can't emphasize it enough. One example is TED. TED features interviews with leading intellectuals around the world, and it's one of the most prestigious platforms out there when it comes to public speaking. But if you go to their site and watch some of their speakers, the first thing you'll notice is that 99% of TED speakers open their presentation with a story, their own story, and they weave it throughout. We see storytelling in business, we see it in social media, and by Wendy's example today, we're going to learn a little bit about how you can take your story and apply it to your own work. Wendy Rivera-Aguilar is the Executive Director of the Multicultural Education Alliance and Principal Attorney at the Rivera-Aguilar Law Firm, PA, in Orlando, Florida. Wendy has a strong public interest track record and a solid background in civil rights, administrative law, and public policy. She was an assistant general counsel for a national regulatory firm where her portfolio included foreign ownership investment reform. She also served as a staff counsel and director of Hispanic affairs for the Multicultural Internet, Media, and Telecom Council, MMTC. While at MMTC, Wendy's work was primarily focused on communication issues that have the greatest impact on the Hispanic community and women entrepreneurs. Prior to joining MMTC, Wendy worked as an associate attorney at the law firm of Hill and Ponton, PA, where she practiced administrative law. Wendy is an ardent defender of civil rights and commits legal services pro bono to the community. She was a participating attorney for the Florida State Conference's branch of the NAACP, where her work covered employment discrimination, energy, and environmental policy issues. Currently, she serves as chair of the Orange County Advisory Board, sits on the board of the Hispanic Council for Reform and Educational Options, or HCREO, chairs Dialogue on Diversity's Entrepreneurship IT Conference Committee, and is a contributing writer for Politic 365. Wendy earned her Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Central Florida and her JD from Stetson University College of Law. She's admitted to practice law in Florida and lives in Orlando with her husband and children. Please welcome Wendy Rivera. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for having me and inviting me to participate.
So tell us about the organizations and some of the projects you're working on.
Absolutely. First, I want to applaud the work that you're doing in elevating this discussion that I think is important, especially in our communities. But just a very basic overview of some of the organizations and the work and initiatives that we're doing. The Multicultural Education Alliance is one of the organizations that I've been working with for the last 3 years or so, and it's based out of Florida. It's a nonprofit organization, and they're focused on expanding access to educational opportunities and increasing student achievement. Because as you know, we've made significant progress, but we're still lagging behind, especially minorities in student achievement. The other organizations that I'm also working with is the Latinos in Technology, Innovation, and Social Media. This organization has been around for about 5 years, and their focus is leveraging the power of technology, basically for social good. We have a local grassroots organization that I've been very involved in, and it's called Aspire to Inspire. And this is basically to inspire minorities to achieve higher and stay in school and pursue higher education. The Hispanic Council for Reform and Educational Options, also known as Hispanic CREO, this is a focus on educational opportunities. And basically, I'm a parent, and I'm a parent of two, and I think it's important for parents to be equipped with the information. So our focus is mobilizing communities and informing them about the options that are available so that these parents can then be empowered to choose whatever is the best learning environment for their particular child. You know, every child is different, so whatever works for that child, that way they're in an environment that they can thrive and realize their potential. So basically, all of these organizations, my focus has been on equity in education and equity in access to technology and broadband.
So Wendy, tell me a little bit about what first interested you in working in STEM, working on issues related to education when it comes to multi-ethnic and multicultural communities.
Right. And you know, and that's a great question because, you know, everyone has a story. And I'll tell you, my story. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a mom, a proud mom of two kids that attend our Orange County Public Schools here in Orlando. And one of the reasons, I should say, I became very involved in education and access to opportunity is because I realized when my husband and I first purchased our first home. Of course, it's our first home, so I wasn't really paying attention to the area in terms of the schools or future schools. Once I started learning a little bit about the zip code and the schools, especially what prompted this was because my son, I don't feel he was being challenged enough in school, and I spoke with the teachers, I even spoke with the principals, and really I wasn't heard. I felt like I had no recourse. I felt like, who's going to listen to me? This was a teacher that was brought over, from the principal in a different district, and they brought their own staff. And when I addressed some of the issues, it made it seem like I was just being a nuisance. And I decided, and my husband and I had a conversation, and we decided that maybe that school's not in the best interest of my child because I didn't feel he was being challenged enough. I know that we have very high expectations. I want him to do better than I did in school, and I want him to be challenged. And so in addressing my concerns with the teachers, I didn't feel like there wasn't a solution for my concerns. We waited. He finished that year, and then we started looking at other schools. So then at this point, my priority was, okay, before we even look at other homes to move into, we wanted to look into the actual school, middle school and high school that my son would be assigned to, because I felt that was important. I didn't want to be in the same situation. And we went ahead and relocated to a different district. The schools were better in the sense that they catered to the specific needs of my son. And ever since my son has been in this different school, we have seen the difference academically and in his behavior. And to me, that was impactful because I felt I'm able to relocate so that my son can get the best quality education. But what about those parents that are not able to relocate because they can't afford it? I was able to do so, but a lot of folks are not able to. They're forced, to stay in that zip code, and their son or daughter is attending a school that may not fit or meet the individual needs of the child. So that compelled me to become a parent advocate because I felt at one point that I didn't have a voice. And so being a parent advocate, I feel like I can be a voice for those parents that may not know about these options and opportunities. And so, when I learned about, proposed a policy or legislation of that sort, one of the things is I never knew about any of these, policy issues. I'm a working mom, so I felt my duty as a concerned citizen is to communicate this to our community, especially the Hispanic community, because there seems to be so much misinformed information. So that this is one of the things that I feel very passionate about in terms of education policy is concerned. I feel parents need to have the tools and the right information in order to choose the best learning environment for their son or daughter.
It's interesting because when my daughter's currently in elementary school, and in our first school district, you never know what to expect with schools. Our first school district was a Title I school district, and
same with me.
It was warm. It was very warm. The principal was great. Her teacher was great. But for various reasons, not solely related to the school, we decided to move about 5 miles east. And it's not a Title I school district. On greatschools.org, it's higher ranked, but it really doesn't have the same warmth that the other school had. So, in some cases, the Title I school may not, it may not be serving the needs, but in other cases it might. Mm-hmm. So it's like you never know what to expect. But I think it's so inspiring that you've decided to advocate not just for yourself, but also for other parents, and you're relating it back to your own. You're not afraid to talk about your own experience, because we live in a hyper competitive, very status conscious world.
Absolutely.
And so, just having the courage to get out there and talk about this and advocate for it, I think I certainly appreciate it as a fellow parent. But let's jump into the statistics a little bit, Wendy. Let's look at some of the data that's out there currently around achievement gaps when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and math. What are some of the statistics that you've seen, particularly when it comes to achievement rates with respect to Latino students?
There's so much data out there, Joe. We're inundated with data, right? But I'll tell you that the White House has a really good collection, a civil rights data collection. And as I'm reading through this data, it's almost obscene, what you read in the collection. We know, as we've been talking about, the importance of having certain skills, especially, science, technology, engineering, math skills, that we need these skills to compete in today's economy, right? And, what's really outrageous to me is that I'm Hispanic, and as you know, Hispanics are the largest minority group in our public school system. Also, we're at 17% of the population, I believe, right now, but we're still not exposed to these STEM subjects at the K through 12 level. And this is noted when you look at the civil rights data collection, where it talks about how minorities have less access to rigorous education like math and science. In fact, specifically, they compile information from 97,000 of the schools of the nation's public schools. I mean, this is data from 97,000, of the nation's public schools. And what that data says, and I don't really hear people talking about this much, but what the data says is that you have Black students, 57% of your Black students, and Latino students, 67%. And when you look at the English language learners, 65% have less access than their white English-speaking peers to the kinds of rigorous math and science. The rigorous skills that you need for many careers and for college. I don't know about you, but this is shocking. This should be people should be up in arms about it. But then again, I think maybe it's a lack of awareness. Maybe, like my parents, they weren't aware of the disparities that exist in certain communities. And I scratch my head and I wonder, are we communicating this? What do we need to do? Because this is really, to me, I'm flabbergasted. I think, as I said earlier, minority participation in STEM should become a national imperative. Not just for Latinos, because I know you asked me the question about Latinos, but really for the sake of our economy and for the sake of our global competitiveness. When you have 2% of the STEM workforce is only Hispanic, but yet your Hispanic population is growing at explosive rates, there's a disconnect there. There's something wrong.
So tell me, Wendy, when you look at the disparities, do you think the problems are happening more so in the schools than they are at home? Or do you think it's a balance between both? Where do you think most of the opportunities lie to help students achieve more in science, technology, engineering, and math?
I think it's just it's not one problem, just like there isn't one solution. There are several factors that contribute to some of the disparities, but there's some of them, some of them that we can control. There's some of them where we can, make changes, and that includes ensuring that our schools are functioning in the 21st century. That's number one. We have schools that are still functioning well, in the 19th century. That's problematic. It's problematic, and that's something that I think could be fixed, right? In fact, it is being worked on, and we've made significant gains. But that would be one of several issues, and if whatever we can control and facilitate, we should. That being one of them. Always, I'll tell you, parent engagement is hard. It's hard, and it's not their fault. I have friends that are good parents, and I'll tell you this from experience. but there's single parents, for example, a single mom. It's hard to be engaged as a parent, but the parent engagement does play a role in the student success. But that's just a factor. We have several other issues, but when you're a single parent and you're working, one job, whether it's one job or two jobs, your priority is to have a roof over your head, right, and to take care of your family. So there, it's not a priority, to be involved in extracurricular activities or involved in school, because the work is really consuming much of their time. So, and this is a discussion that I've had, with people that I'm close with, because it's, I ask, what drives you, and what makes you want to be engaged or not. And it's not that they don't want to be engaged, it's that there's certain priorities, because of the economic status of some folks. And I think that also plays a role in a sense, the economic status. But it's important that we break the cycle of poverty and inequality. And, whatever we can do, whether it's at the grassroots or tops or at the policy level, then we need to ensure, that there's high expectations, because even if at home, there isn't the encouragement of, high academic expectations, at least at school, we have good quality teachers that are ensuring that the skills that they receive or acquire are those that will prepare them for success. For meaningful careers.
Now, you've been very successful at growing your personal experience into a personal brand, essentially, and an organization that advocates on behalf of some of the groups you mentioned. What are some of the tools? They could be apps, they could be online resources, but what are some of the tools, or what are some of the best practices that you've implemented that keep you on top of your game?
So, I'm going to say the internet is one of the things that's a must for me at home, and we have like the highest speed. But because of the work that we do, and but I'll tell you, if we're looking at what are some of the tools that I would recommend, for folks, for our partners, for private and public partnerships, of course, that's going to be your ensuring access to broadband in the homes of school-age children. But so I'll tell you here at home, that's a must for us, and our kids, they don't know any different. They're used to, just going online and doing a quick search, and any information is really at their fingertips. Kids now are learning how to use these iPads, and your iPhone before they can even read and write. But I'll tell you, one of the things is I have kids that are just, bouncing off the wall. So it helps me personally to be up a few hours before the family gets up, to start reading some of the, getting up to date on some of the policy discussions and some of the issues that are happening, not just here locally, but also nationally. So, just having that, I work remotely. And so sometimes, that could be good and that could be bad, because, you could work from anywhere. But one of the things that has worked for me personally is, just being, up before everyone else. And it's helped me focused. Once the kids get home from school, it's a different dynamic at home. For those that have kids, understand I don't have nannies, you see. Right. And so, some of my friends have nannies, and so that's very, it's very helpful, but I don't. So we have to, work with what we have, and we're two working families. We don't have nannies, so we have to rearrange our schedule, to make it work. It gets a little tough when I travel, But, I'll tell you that everything is just collaboration, having a good support system, just speaking personally.
And what is not to sound negative or anything, but I always like to ask the question, what's the worst piece of career advice you've ever gotten and why? That's a good one. I don't know if I should call it advice or it was more of a command, but it was along the lines, I come from an old school family, and we're all Puerto Ricans, and there's certain mindsets, and in certain cultures, and certainly the culture of a working woman who travels, who is really working sometimes more than full time. And it was difficult, for some folks to embrace. And so I would say I was told, by some members of my family, actually, that I should dedicate my time to be home with the kids and raise my children at home. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is just not for me, And so I think there's still that culture where, you're a mother and you need to be home with your children and you need to, cook for your husband and have your dinner ready for your husband. And you should stay home because you're a woman and you're a mother now, and now you have 2 kids. Being a lawyer is really not for you. So, that I would say, if I have to say there's anything negative that really has really been impactful would be that, that only made me just want to pursue what I was pursuing rigorously. And what was the last book you read that you felt compelled to recommend to essentially everyone you met? I really like John Maxwell, and he's one of the New York Times bestselling authors. I really like reading his books because they talk about how to lead people, and that's one of the books, or the latest book that I read was How to Successfully Lead Folks. And I think this is, it's important because, one of the things that I've learned, and this is why I would recommend this book to other folks, is because, you realize that the greatest asset and the greatest potential for that goes up in value is the people. Investing in people and investing in a strong network of supporters, and so I really enjoy his books, and that's the one I would recommend. Wendy, it's truly been an honor having you on the show, and I look forward to seeing more of your work and hearing more from you. Where can folks find you online? You can find me at Rivera, Rivera-Aguilar, AGUILAR.com. Wendy, thanks for joining me. A pleasure. Take care. You too. That concludes episode 22 of the podcast. Thanks so much to all of you for listening. I cannot do any of this without you, so thank you. If you're new to the podcast, or even if you've been listening for a while, I have a free cheat sheet for all of my new email subscribers, and you can find the sign up for that at washingtech.com/cheat sheet. And that cheat sheet is a guide for you to get up to speed on various different policy areas, including cybersecurity, intellectual property, net neutrality, and other areas. It's a quick reference anytime you're preparing for a meeting or writing something you need citations for. That's washingtech.com/cheat sheet. Thanks again to all of you for listening. I will see you back here next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Washing Tech Policy Podcast. You've been briefed.